I'm April Anderson-Zorn. I'm the University Archivist for Illinois State University's Milner Library, and I'm here today for hashtag Ask an Archivist Day. It's a whole month, but really it falls on October 13th that celebrates and lets people know what archivists are, what we do, and what our job is, and the importance of it, both in our community and throughout the world. How many people work at University Archives? Well, first let me lay the scene for you. We have a lot of stuff. We have about between 12 and 15,000 linear feet of material. So take your average house, quadruple that a couple of dozen times, and fill it full of boxes with stuff, lots of paper. That's probably how much stuff we have at a University Archive. So with that in mind, there's just myself as the University Archivist. There are two other assistant archivists. One handles all of our research questions. So when you call or someone calls and says, I need an answer to this history question, Julie Neville takes care of that. Julie Neville also handles all of our photography, scan requests, anything audio-visual for those research requests. And then Julie also, when we get materials that come into University Archives, she puts those into existing collections that are ready to be accessed by researchers. The other staff member, Jenna handles all of our collections that aren't processed. So things that we've had, materials that come in, collections that come in, that still need to be preserved, made accessible. Jenna handles those materials. And quite frankly, that's about it. We do get, almost every semester, we'll get a student research assistant for about 10 hours a week that we can have come in and help us with those research requests and those scanning requests, so they do get on-the-job experience. And we also take a number of interns and volunteers that come in, and we teach them how to work with materials and make them accessible. But they do come in and we have them help us out through the semester. But we really only have 3 people and half a person, but 3 people on staff, myself, Julie Neville, and Jenna Self. What are the University Archives? What are our biggest collections? Well, it's a couple of big collections that we have out there. So one of our big collections are the photographic services collection. That collection has easily over 100,000 images in it, and I'm talking photographic proof cards. So the photographer at the time, Nelson Smith, would go out on a job and he'd take a bunch of photos of an event, and he would pick out his choice images and put them on these sort of 5x7 index cards that he called a proof card. And he'd stick a photo on it and some of his choice photos, say maybe 5, and then he'd save the negatives. And out of that job, he could have 30 or more negatives, even though he chose 5 of his favorite images. We have all of that. We have that from the 1930s through around the mid to late 1990s of just the physical collection. And actually that collection, we don't have the entirety of. There are portions of it that are missing. That collection, unfortunately, was found on the side of the road in the mid-2000s on the way to the dump by my predecessor, Joanne Rayfield, who saved the collection and brought it out to University Archives, which is why we have it and which is why we are called the Joanne Rayfield Archives. So that's a collection large in number. One of our other, I'd say 2 collections that make one is the Mennonite collection. So we've got 2 Mennonite nursing collections. We have the Mennonite College of Nursing, which is one of the colleges here in Illinois State. We have their administrative papers. The other collection is the Mennonite Hospital Collection. That is a collection of materials of Mennonite Hospital before it transferred into the university and became a college. So I believe it started in the early 1920s. It goes from their founding in the early 1920s through to the 1990s when they became a college. And it's that administrative material, some of their nursing teaching materials are found within that collection. Both of those are easily 50 plus linear feet. So the entirety of the collection is well over 100 linear feet, maybe 150 linear feet. We do have the Kenway photograph collection. That's another one that's got numerous photographs from around the community. Some of the first Steak and Shake, when Steak and Shake first opened in Bloomington, you can find photos of its opening day in that collection. And then we just have large things. We have presidential portraits that are hanging on the fence that are quite large. We've got many of those. We've had 20 presidents now. We're on our number 20. So we've got several presidential portraits that are out there. I even have a plaster goat head. Not like a goat's head. It's the plaster of a goat head. And this is my plug to go to the alumni engagement website and go take a look. We did a video on this not too long ago for the Alumni Association where we did a tour and I showed off the weird objects of university archives. And I call him Charlie the Goat Head. He's one of them. How does someone become an archivist? Well, a lot of different ways. I got into archives through theater, honestly. I used to do theater, not like on stage dancing theater. I used to do backstage theater. And then I said, you know what, I want to get a history degree because I was already doing a little bit of history research and doing props. I was a props master and I traveled around doing that for about a decade before I decided to go and get my first master's in history, and I learned how to do historical research. And in that world, I learned about archives and said, oh, this is my dream job. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And then later went and got a library science degree from Florida State University. First one's at UCF, University of Central Florida. And so here I am. I know archivists that come into this business through library school. Traditionally, they go to library school and they'll get a library degree and they'll work within an archive and work their way through various repositories until they build up a resume and a career. But then there are plenty of other archivists out there who work for the federal, state, or local governments. Some that have worked for corporations for their entire career and have built their careers on working for archives like Culver's or Sears, or you name a big national company, and they've worked there. So you can come at it a bunch of different ways. You can even come at it from science and mathematics and specialize in those areas. When I first got into it, I wasn't necessarily looking to be a university archivist. I wanted to do travel and tourism archives, and I wanted to do theater archives. But here I am. I still get to do a little bit of that in with the teaching materials that I get to work with every day. But you can come at it from any different angle. That's right. Speaking of history, I am not part of the history department. We get this all the time. People think that we're history and we deal with the history of the university, so we must be part of the history department. We are not part of the history department. I do occasionally teach a class for the history department, archives and manuscripts, but we are a department within Milner Library. We are very much a part of Milner Library. We are librarians and archivists who work for Milner Library. We just happen to work off campus in a very large warehouse, the only building really that can hold all the stuff that we have. How are archives materials used in the classroom? Well, that can happen in a number of ways. First of all, we are not located in our parent library. We are in a warehouse facility 3 miles north of campus. So when we do get requests for physical archives materials to be used in a classroom setting, there's a little bit of logistics that has to happen before we can make that happen. Sometimes we get requests for physical items like, say, our first president's Civil War swords, one of which has just come back from conservation. We had a donor very graciously give us a little bit of money to have that sword conserved. So those swords can sometimes find their way into a classroom where we talk about what these objects are, the importance of these objects to the history of the university and how they relate to the Civil War, and we talk a little bit about the history of the man who used to own them. Sometimes we get requests for documents, so I work with that faculty member and we determine what collections and what materials in a collection best suit the topic that they are discussing in that classroom. So sometimes what we'll do is I'll come in and give lessons on what are archives, how to use archival material in research, how to examine a document for its historical integrity and how to read it as a historical document. And we teach them how to research collections, maybe outside of the materials that I've brought to the classroom. So that's physical stuff. We also have a number of materials online that we can assist, especially in our online Zoom world, how to help those online classes. So say a student is researching the history of the development of a building on our campus. We have all of our yearbooks, all of our course catalogs, all of our university governance, all online, and that student can keyword search through those materials to find the pieces from those primary sources to create that story that they're trying to tell. We have different databases that we can point students to, and we can do our same type of how to use archives materials in the classroom in a digital environment with those digital materials. One of the examples of how you use archives in the classroom comes from Alicia Wadika, one of her public health classes, where she asks us to come into the classroom and teach her students not only what are archives and how archives are used, but those students then utilize primarily the online materials, but we do get some enterprising students that come in and use the physical materials out at archives to create at first physical exhibits, and we did physical exhibits in the library where students were talking about how public health has evolved over the last 100 years, say with the public health pandemic in 1918, the AIDS pandemic later on in the 80s and 90s, various types of health and public safety issues that we have dealt with over the years. Those students research those materials and do exhibits on them. And in our pandemic world, the students have been creating online exhibits using social media. And so they've been kind of doing Instagram takeovers of our Instagram account, where they get the chance to then tell their story using our materials and how public health has evolved over the last 100 years using university materials. What's my favorite part of being an archivist? Honestly, it's whenever I get to do events and talk to alumni, because you get lots of stories, maybe some you didn't necessarily want to hear, but you heard them anyway, but you get lots of stories from alumni who, when they tell you this story, they're giving you a part of themselves and a part of their history that you would never get in a physical collection. I had one gentleman, I love telling this story actually, I had one gentleman one year at home. So we were tailgating, my friends and I, and a gentleman walks down and he says, "Hey, you're the archivist, I hear. You need to come down to our tent down the way. I want to show you something." I know, admittedly, you're kind of, at first you're like, "What? You're good," but I went anyway. And I met the nicest group of alumni who have been celebrating since about 6:30 that morning, and we're well into the afternoon by this point. And they bring every year to tailgating. They had laminated, I don't know, some of you archivists are going to be like, "What? They laminated?" They laminated some of their posters from when they were students back in the 70s, and they hang them up at tailgate, all around their tailgate, and they had all at some point been part of Reggie Redbird before Reggie Redbird was named in 1981. They had all been part of this Redbird mascot tradition, and they all told stories about how they had been at Tri-Towers, one of the residential complexes on campus, and how you had to live at Tri-Towers to go be the Redbird at games and events, and you did this on a volunteer basis. And they told stories about putting Reggie's costume, the Redbird costume together, just gluing feathers and what they had to do to make that Redbird happen. And it was not an easy thing to do, and how dedicated they were to making the Redbird mascot happen prior to the university making Reggie Redbird a thing in 1981. And that's where I got the story about the Redbird who kept molting onto the basketball court one evening, and they had a gentleman with a broom they had to keep pausing the game to go sweep the feathers off the floor because the Redbird kept molting. And I actually went into the photographic services collection and found photos of that very event, of the Redbird molting out onto the basketball court. So going back, my favorite thing is talking to alumni who always have the best stories, which are just as vital to the archives as the physical materials. What do I want at archives? I want stuff. So I want things that tell the university's story. I want things that document how the university came to be. I want materials that tell us how we got to this point in our history, and sometimes that history can be messy, so I'm happy to take things that maybe aren't so glorious about the university's history, but I'm also happy to take those stories of Redbird molting on the basketball court, or even have a discussion about laminated posters. We do take lots of student memorabilia, so if there are t-shirts and buttons, the dining card passes where you had to punch them in the 40s and 50s, your ID cards, all of that stuff that maybe you kept when you were a student here. We do take student materials. I also take faculty papers. So if there's a faculty member who maybe spent a big chunk of their career here at Illinois State, and a lot of their research was created while they were here, I love to have conversations with faculty about donating their research papers and having them part of the archives so that we can further teach students how this discipline evolved over time. We've got collections, say in English, where we can show how this has changed, especially as technology came into play, 60s, 70s, 80s, how that field has changed in the way it has been taught to students over the last several decades, and we can do that with faculty papers. So I always want to take faculty papers. And of course, we're happy to have those discussions, not just about physical materials, but about digital materials as well. They're just as important. So if you think, I got some photos I took when I was here in the early 2000s, yeah, I actually do want those too. So let us know. We'll have a conversation about bringing those over to the archives. Easy peasy. You can email us at archives@ilstu or archives@illinoisstate.edu. That's the easiest way to get to us. That email comes to myself, it comes to Julie, it comes to Jenna, and all three of us monitor that email. You can also go to the library's website, library.illinoisstate.edu, and there's a little collections tab at the very top of that page, and you can click on that and you will get information about not just us. You'll see Joanne Rayfield Archives on there, but you'll also get information about special collections, our digital collections and digitization center here within Milner Library, and lots of other history if you're looking outside of university history. But that page has lots of great information there, as well as how to telephone us if that is your mode of getting a hold of us. We're also on social media. It's ISU Archives pretty much across the board for Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks for stopping by once again for your yearly Ask an Archivist Day. I'm April the Archivist, and if you have any other questions, please let us know. We're always happy to answer your archives questions, whether they're donations or a history question. Please ask away.